moved the goalposts a little bit.
I said I'd teach you how to become a millionaire and or not die penniless. Why can't I full screen? There we go. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of the personal finance class. This time we're focusing on retirement and investing, and or not dying penniless. So first question to people who were here before, did anyone end up making a Mint account? Did you guys, do you like it? Was it helpful for you? If anyone did it?
I
My
set it
account
up
already
and
had it, but I also never spend money anyway, so
Nice.
it would just be my rent and then groceries.
Nice. And
I set it up, but I haven't been checking it all that much. Like I
yeah,
maybe check it once a week or something.
cool. Yeah, you really don't have to. Like, it's just a good kind of heartbeat. Andrew, did you set anything up? I'm just curious.
No.
Okay, whatever. Okay, cool. Well, I don't know, thought I would ask. Um, all right, so retirement and investing. So when it comes to retirement, there are two questions that need answering. Where are we going and how do we get there? And by that I mean we need to know, we need to define what retirement is. We need to know where we are trying to go. And then we need to strategize to try to figure out how we are going to get from where we are to where that is. So, this is the big question. Can I retire? Do I need to keep working to live? And the uh, the way to think of this is, so if you had $100 million, you could retire. If you had $10 million, do you think you could retire? And what about 1 million? So basically, like, my point being that there is a certain point where if you had this gross amount of money, obviously you'd never need to work again. And just running out the math there, if you're 27 and you want your hoard of cash to get you to 70 when Social Security kicks in, if you got $100 million, you can split that up into $2.3 million a year, and it'll get you to 70. With $10 million, you'd have $232,000 a year to spend, and with $1 million, you would have $23,000 a year to spend. However, this is too naive because this is just assuming that your money is completely static and you just split it up and pull out from it every year the exact same amount, and importantly that the dollar value stays exactly the same. This is basically you got $1 million sitting in a checking account, or a savings account more likely. But that's not how it works. In reality, if you invest your money, if you don't just stick it in a checking or savings account, it's going to grow over time because stocks and bonds grow in value over time. And we're going to get into that in a little more detail later. But the important thing is that there's this study, absolutely hallmark, landmark study called the Trinity study, and it showed that if you have a portfolio that's split 50-50 stocks and bonds, there is no 30-year period, or rather, and you withdraw 4% of that portfolio every year for 30 years, you've got a 95% chance that you'll have money after the end of that 30 years. So the important bit is, can I retire now is really a question of, can I live off of 4% of my current savings? So if you got $1 million, you can pull out 40 grand every year and use that, and be reasonably certain that in 30 years, you're going to still have money left over. That 4% is called a safe withdrawal rate. It's, the amount you can take out where you can reasonably assume that it's basically just going to stay where it is. And I actually bumped that down to 3.5% for my personal calculations, just so that if the market and whatnot doesn't perform quite to how it did in the past, I don't end up in that 5%. A 3.5% safe withdrawal rate, or a 3% withdrawal rate has never failed. There's been no 30-year period where if you pull 3%, you'll run out of money.
Is this pulling out 3% a year, or?
Yes, 3.5% of your total portfolio per year. Thank you. Yep. Yep. So the opposite way of doing it is you can take your expenses and multiply by 25, aka divide by 4%. And if you have more than that, you can retire immediately because you can cover your expenses with your current hoard. So the important thing is, and this is the big, most important takeaway from this whole thing, is pretty much everyone teaches you that retirement is an age. You retire when you're 65, you retire when you're 70, whatever. Retirement has nothing to do with how old you are. If you had $10 million right now, you could retire. Retirement is not an age, it's a dollar value. So that's the first really big, huge point. And that dollar value defines where we're going. We are trying to reach that level where if we pull 4%, we're going to be able to coast for 30 years. Everybody with me? This all making sense so far? Cool. I hate Zoom presentations.
Yes, everything's making sense. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So you can't retire. Chances are with your current hoard you can't retire. But another number to keep in mind is your coast number. So basically, your investments are probably going to grow at about 7% per year. So if you had some pile of money, so let's say you're 27 and you have $208,000 invested, if you just don't touch that money, if you just get a job at Starbucks and, just barely make enough to cover your expenses, by the time you hit your quote unquote retirement age of 67, that will have grown to make it so that you can retire. So the coast number is good to keep track of because that's the point at which every additional dollar is actually earning you years. It's pulling you further. It's getting you extra time. You're going for an early retirement once you're past this coast number. And there are calculators online to help you calculate this out. Those numbers I gave are using some, I think, reasonable assumptions. But if anyone's interested, I can post the calculator later. So coast number is another number to try to reach because that's the point at which you get to just chill. And any additional savings are actually going to make it so that you can retire early. Which, another point I do want to make is early retirement is attainable. Early retirement is a very realistic goal for, I would say, most people. So don't just automatically assume that you're going to be working until 67 or 70. But we'll get to that. And we'll get to that with this. So another really important factor for your retirement is your savings rate. So your savings rate is how much you save divided by how much you earn. And logically, if you don't save anything, in other words, you are spending exactly as much as you earn, you can never retire because you're never saving any money. You have to work to live. So that means that if you ever plan to retire, you have to save some amount. And the other extreme, if you saved all your money, everything coming in was just going into savings, then you have no need to work because your work's not doing anything. You're not spending any of the money that you're saving. And so this little table, for one thing, I do want to say is extremely oversimplified, but it shows what a staggering difference it can make at these low percentages to increase your savings rate. In other words, if you can cut your spending by 5%, so if you're currently saving, 10% of your income, if you can cut spending by 5% and save an extra 5, you just earned 8 years of your life. And again, this is oversimplified, but I do want to drive in that increasing your savings rate is extremely important. We talked about it a lot in the first session, but if you can get your savings rate up, you're just going to shed years. And especially in these low percentages, if you can even bump your 5 to 10, you're going to save 15 years. Is that making sense? This savings rate a confusing concept at all? I feel like I'm going a little fast. Do you guys feel like I'm going a little fast?
I'm following. I don't know about anyone.
Speed's good for me.
Okay.
I'm following, but I'm wondering like how this assumes things about what your life costs. Because like it's easy to increase our savings now, but say we have 4 children, or like
Yeah.
right? Like does it assume that your income increases along with your costs or something, or?
Yeah, more or less. And that is fairly true. Like, as you get older, chances are you'll be earning more and more, and therefore it becomes easier to save. But also, you tend to have your expenses raise. Like having a house is generally more expensive than renting, for example. And yeah, your savings rate will fluctuate with time. Like, for example, when I was saving for my wedding, my savings rate dropped to practically 0 because all of it was just going towards the wedding. And so that's just life. And this percentage only tells you if you maintained this exact percentage for your entire, if you save 30% for 28 years, you would be good. So yes, things do fluctuate, and that's fine and normal. So my last point about where we're going is Social Security. So probably a lot of you don't know how Social Security works, and that's okay because it's confusing for one thing. So first off, a general overview of Social Security is high level. The idea is while you are working, you are taxed into Social Security. You pay into Social Security. And as you are paying into Social Security, your wages make it so that once you pull your Social Security, dependent on how much you paid in, you'll get more out. It's basically a forced retirement account for every American that they have no choice but to contribute to. And the way it actually works is while you are working, you are paying for the people who are retired for when they worked. So it's problematic when you have population fluctuations and millennials are actually somewhat boned because we've got all these boomers retired and they are going to require a lot more of our money than, yeah, so we're putting in a lot in. But anyways, Social Security, the way it works is every year you can earn up to 4 credits. If you earn at least $5,640 in the year, you will get 4 credits. And to claim Social Security, you need at least 40 credits. So it's highly recommended that before you retire, you try to spend at least 10 years where you earn that bare minimum of $5,640. So even if you have some year where you end up not working a lot, it would still be recommended that you have, like a seasonal job or something to try to get over that hump to get your credits. That being said, chances are none of us will have trouble doing this because we're not going to be working 10 years. We're going to be working, 30 or whatever.
I have a question.
Yep.
So if you're like, say you get married to someone, and like you get married right out of high school, and so you actually have no working years, does that mean that like you don't get Social Security at all?
You mean you get married right out of high school and then you don't work at all?
Yeah, like you get married and like you're a housewife for 40 years.
Yeah, so that's almost exactly what happened to my parents. My mom has definitely not worked 10 years. And I'm not sure on the specifics, but there are spousal benefits. So I know I actually was just texting my dad about this because I was asking him if it was okay for me to use his numbers. And he said that next year they're going to take out for both he and my mom. And my mom, most of her benefit is coming from just being married to him. So it's not like you're screwed if you don't work, but you're married to someone that does work. I don't know the specifics though. But yeah, you do have some spousal linkage in some sort. And there's something called survivorship benefits that, like, if your partner dies, you still get their benefits or something. But again, I'm not clear on all that. But the important thing is the average Social Security benefit is $1,500 a month, which means from the age of either 67 or ideally 70 onwards, you're going to be pulling in something like $1,500 a month. And in my dad's case, where he earned, quite a bit above, well, I mean, my dad earned above average wage throughout his working career. He's well above that 1,500. He's actually making close to $4,000 a month starting next year. And that's partly that he's pulling for both he and my mom. So it's actually probably closer to, like 1,800 or 1,900 per person per month. But their expenses are almost completely covered. So this is a very important thing to keep in mind, is that saving for retirement is important, and getting a strong 401k, IRA, all that stuff is important. But you will have Social Security once you reach actual quote-unquote retirement age. And then my last point on Social Security is that it actually pays you more the longer you wait to claim it. You can claim it, I think, as early as 65 right now, maybe something like that. But if you wait until 70, the benefit actually increases by 8% per year, which is a huge difference. So my parents are waiting until my dad is 68 to pull anything, and my mom is 62. So I guess 62 is probably the minimum age. So ideally, if you are optimizing, you would have enough of a cushion in your other retirement accounts to get you to 70, and then you would start pulling Social Security, and that would give you maximum Social Security. Any questions on Social Security? I know that's probably something a lot of you haven't thought too much about or don't know much about.
I have a question, and like straight up not memeing on this because I generally don't know as much about it, but like,
Yeah.
how confident are you in your ability to claim Social Security by the time you're 70?
So that's a very good question, and I'm not going to tell you that Social Security is guaranteed. Shit happens, and it's completely possible that Social Security will go bankrupt at some point, or it'll get destroyed, or they'll end up moving the retirement year to 75 or some bullshit by the time we're there. So I would say view Social Security as a bonus. You know, don't have your whole retirement hinge on whether or not you get Social Security. And the rest of this presentation will be about trying to build the stuff other than this. So as far as confidence, I would say I feel quite confident that I will receive some benefit from Social Security. I would be pretty stunned if it just completely didn't exist at all by the time we're retiring, but I also wouldn't be surprised if those benefits are slashed either dramatically or not dramatically. So that's a very good question, though. And like I said, don't count on it because it is based on politics. There are evil, evil people who will be more than happy to rip this out of millennials' hands even after we pay into it for 30 odd years and with no choice. And if I had the choice, I would certainly rather put more money in my 401k than into Social Security, but that's not how Social Security works. Then boomers die. Which, I mean, you know. Any other questions on Social Security before I move on? Cool. Oh, yeah. So any general questions on where we're going? Like, you know, basically, yeah, the goal. No. Cool. Okay. So now the next part. How do we get there? Stonks. I'm telling you, man. Stonks are the best. They only go up, never go down. And yeah, so investing is the answer. So the way that you accumulate a large amount of wealth is to invest money over time. There are many different investing strategies, the simplest of which is to put your money into a bank account. However, as I said before, when you do that, your money doesn't grow and it's very inefficient. And so I am sharing with you my investing strategy, and the way that I arrived at this investing strategy was that I very much want to focus on making as few decisions as possible. So a little background. For those that don't know, I have a bit of a history with Bitcoin. When I was in high school, I spent a weekend or a couple of weekends mining a Bitcoin. So I had one whole Bitcoin, current value $23,000. And when I was mining it up, it was worth $2 per coin. And that was just barely covering electricity for my dual GTX 8800s that I was mining on. So I mined up an entire Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin soared. It went through the roof to $20 per Bitcoin. And I was like, who the fuck is spending $20 to buy this stupid magic internet money off of me? So I went on eBay and I sold my Bitcoin for $20 and then probably bought like a fucking donut with it. And then time passes, things happen with Bitcoin, and I feel like an idiot. I feel like if I had just kept mining, I could have easily amassed 100 Bitcoin, and I could have sold it all, and gotten literal millions of dollars. So I ended up buying in again, and this time I actually bought in, and I bought in at $1,100. Again, current value 23,000. And it crashed. It crashed down to 750, I think it was, and it just stayed there for like a year. It was like just completely flatlined. And I was like, this is fucking stupid. I'll just take my loss. So I sold out. I lost 400 bucks on that. And then it surged again, and I bought in at 3,400. And it did end up going up, but then it just stagnated, and I realized that it was just tracking the stock market, and I was like, this is fucking stupid, and I sold out again. So in total, if I had never sold any Bitcoin, I would have made at least $75,000 if I sold it today, which actually is not that much in the grand scheme of things. If I had kept mining, I would be super rich. But the reason I tell this story is because when I owned Bitcoin, I couldn't stop checking the price. I would check at least once a day, usually every few hours, and every time it went up, I thought, fuck, I should have bought more. And every time it went down, I thought, fuck, I should sell. And it sucked. It was terrible, and I hated it. And I was thinking about Bitcoin and shit all the time, and that was because I was making decisions. I was trying to quote unquote time the market, buy low, sell high, and that's stressful. And it stuck in my head and made me think about this thing that I didn't want to think about. And so I have given up on that, and my investment strategy now is focused around index funds. So an index fund is basically a stock that you can buy, but when you buy that stock, you are buying a bundle of hundreds of stocks at a time. So the one that I buy is called VTSAX. That's the stock ticker for it. It's the Vanguard Total Stock Market. Oh, that should say index fund, not mutual fund. And when I buy a share of VTSAX, I'm buying a small, tiny part of 3,586 stocks. And you'll see why I choose this strategy in a minute, but the reason I love this investing strategy and why I have chosen it over buying individual stocks or buying Bitcoin or anything else is that my only question is how much can I buy? Because I want to own as much of these index funds as I can as quickly as I can. And we'll explain more on that in a minute. But that, at a high level, is my investing strategy, and I choose it because it's dead simple and I don't have to think about it. Another index fund, and the one that I would actually recommend to you guys, is called a target date fund. So whereas VTSAX tries to track the entire stock market, in other words, it tries to buy as many different stocks that it will track as the stock market as a whole goes up and down. There's also these things called target date funds, which you say, I want to retire in 2060, and they will, well, maybe I should go, I'll go into that in more detail after I explain a little bit more. But yeah, we'll talk about target date funds in a second. And the only other thing I want to mention about index funds is that they have these things called expense ratios, which is, so running these costs money. You know, you got to hire someone to buy all these stocks and manage this thing. And so it's usually, it's always as a percentage. So if you have $100 invested and the expense ratio is 1%, then every year they'll take $1 out, or more likely every month they'll take 1/12 of $1 out. 1% is typical for index funds, and I won't get into the math, but keeping your expense ratios low makes a huge impact on your long-term success, because having that 1% expense ratio is basically like taking a 1% hit on your growth, which is massive. Losing 1% of your growth is huge. So minimizing expense ratios is really good. VTSAX is 0.04% expense ratio per year. So I think my current investments cost me like $10 or $15 a year. So yeah, I can just skip a drink at Starbucks and I've paid for my investments for the year. So that's just something to watch out for, and it's particularly important when, well, we'll talk about it more, but when you're doing 401k fund picking, it's very common for them to have index funds with very high and mutual funds with very high expense ratios, and those should be avoided entirely. They're not worth it. Any questions on what an index fund is? Are you guys aware of this concept at all? Cool. All right. So, stocks and bonds. So stocks are shares in a company. They're literally, if you buy stocks, if you buy Tesla stock or whatever, you are becoming part owner of Tesla. And that means that hypothetically what you are buying into is a tracker for the value of the company as a whole. Because if some company is worth $1 billion and you own 100 stocks, your stocks are worth 100 divided by, or billion divided, or 100 divided by $1 billion. And that means that they grow as the value of the companies grow. But it also means that they're quite volatile, because stock pricing and stock valuation is just a guess. It's just somebody deciding what they think this company is worth. And so if you see over here, you know, COVID hits, the whole stock market drops by like 20% in a day or whatever. And like, you know, stock market, it just goes up and down quickly. Versus this blue line, which is bonds, which are much more stable. Bonds are issued by governments, so they actually are not, bonds are really a way of borrowing money. They don't actually have anything to do with the value of, you know, a company or anything. It would be something like, you know, the city of, I don't know, Yonkers needs money to repave. They can make a bond where they say, okay, you give me your 10 grand and I'll pay you back with 3% interest. That bond yield would be 3%. And that makes them a lot less volatile, because so when you buy and sell the bonds, it's not, so they come from much more stable entities, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not some guy on Wall Street saying Tesla's worth $1 billion because 50 years from now, they're going to be fully autonomous taxis. Bonds are from governments. They are way more stable. And so you can see, you know, the stock market goes up, it goes down, and even in these spots where the stock market like crashes down, the bond market's just chilling. It's slowly raising up and up and up. So when you're deciding on how to make your investments, it's usually recommended that you have a blend. You have stocks to make it so that you grow quickly, and then you have bonds to make it so that you have some stability. And I personally am all in on stocks. I own practically no bonds because I figure if shit hits the fan, I've got 30 years to wait for it to stop hitting the fan. I am not sure if I recommend that or not, especially if you are just starting out. I really recommend you go with a target date fund, which I am going to show you right now. So the target date fund that I mentioned before was called VTTSX, and this is Vanguard's fund that targets 2060. So if you're planning on retiring in 2060, what this fund does is, oh God, hold on. They had a nice little thing. Years or I can't see the thing. Well, anyways, so what these target date funds do is they manage that split of stocks and bonds for you. So right now, VTTSX is for people who are planning on retiring in 40 years. So they're heavy into growth. They're 90-10 on stocks and bonds. However, as that 2060 date grows closer and closer, this will automatically, for you, without you doing a single thing, slowly convert those stocks into bonds to even out your growth. Because in retirement, you don't want to be all in on stocks because you don't want it to drop by 20%, and then you're caught with your pants down. You want it to be more even. That reminds me, I might want to. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So that's what a target date fund is, and that would be my recommendation, is to just pick this target date fund that's most aligns with your age. I think 2060 is a good 40 years from now, 67 or whatever, and just dump money into this, and they'll take care of everything else. They will split between stocks and bonds for you. So any questions on that, target date funds and whatnot?
Yeah, so like you're recommending this one fund. Like, what does it look like to actually do it? Do you just like dump everything in it until 2060, or
Yeah, exactly.
what?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. You just buy that one fund, and then that means that you're buying 90-10 stocks, bonds right now, and over time it will turn into a safer and safer bet for you until eventually, once it reaches 2060, I think it goes to 60-40, which is the generally recommended when you're actually in retirement blend. So yeah, that's why I recommend the target date fund. Is you can literally just throw money at this thing, and it's always going to be a good decision.
So my question, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this or not, but how do you actually go about doing this? Because this is where I get confused. I don't know, like, through what website or what app or anything like that. I don't know how to physically do this. Because if
Yeah,
I'm investing a lot of money, I obviously want to be very secure. I don't want to just throw my whole bank account to the void.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That is coming up.
okay, great.
Yeah. Yep.
And then, so I guess if you're going to go over this, we can go over it when you're going to go over this. But
Mm.
why are you suggesting this approach rather than the one that you use personally?
So I'm suggesting this because um, it's particularly good if you don't want to think about this or understand it or worry about it. Um, I have made the conscious choice to take higher risk under the hope that it will get me to an earlier retirement, but I understand that risk and I understand that it could blow up in my face. Whereas this approach is more or less brainless. You're just trusting that this fund is going to, make decent decisions for you, which it will. They know what they're doing. Um, so yeah, go ahead.
And I guess the other question is, if the other approach is higher risk, do you go all in on the other approach, or do you have it split partially between something like this, which is a safer bet, and a higher risk approach?
And that would be a personal choice. Like you could absolutely go partly into a target date fund that's going to be pretty safe and then also go more into stocks separately to increase your risk and increase your growth potential. But it's a personal call. Um, a target date fund's a very safe choice. It's probably going to work out, which is why I recommend it. If I get unlucky and the stock market drops right when I think I'm about to retire, I could be SOL and have to keep working longer. Um, so, and also I partly am going all in on stocks because like it's just so far away for me. Like I'm not even barely to the point where I need to even think about can I retire yet or not. And so stocks grow faster than anything else, and all I care about right now is growth. So to me, it's like, why even bother with this 10% bond thing that's just going to drag? Um, but it's higher risk. Um, cool. Any other questions on this stuff? Cool, cool. So this next part is the good news. Everyone here is super, super young. And I'm sure you know it. Everyone says you got to invest early because it grows over time. And probably you're all aware of compound interest. But just quickly, compound interest is the fact that if you invest $1 and that dollar earns you $1, you now have $2 earning you more dollars. So your $1 you put in turned into more money, and that more money is making you get more money. Your money is making money that makes you money. So that's why getting in early is good. And assuming a 7% growth rate and assuming you're going for 40 years, just sitting there at 7%, every dollar you buy right now is going to be $15 at retirement. It is a 1,500% increase just for putting your money in the stock market. Um, and so, and my other point is, most people don't start saving for retirement at all until they're like 35. The fact that you guys are sitting here in this call with me right now means that you are ahead of the curve, and that's great. That is something that you should be seriously proud of because most people don't think about this, most people don't care about it, and they end up really biting themselves in the ass because that same calculation, so, ooh, So I did, 40 years times 1.07. So let's say instead you go 67 minus 35 is 32 years. So then every dollar is 1.07 to the 32nd. That wasn't helpful.
If you just type in calculator, you should get something that Google will parse.
Nice.
Oh, this brings me back to undergrad using Wolfram Alpha. It's been a while.
So, so if you start investing at 35 instead of 27, that $15 per dollar becomes $8 per dollar. So investing as much as you can as early as you can is going to be very much to your benefit. And again, I do want to emphasize, you guys are doing good. You're ahead of the curve.
So, how did you manage to round 8.7 to a flat 8?
Fine, $9. I rounded the 14.9 up to 15, so anyways.
0.7 was for the tax man.
Yeah. So yeah, this is working in your favor, compound interest. So yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Can you explain what exactly like the relationship between compound interest and like market growth? Like, are you investing in a fund assuming that that growth rate is the same as that interest rate, or like what
So I guess compound interest is not the right word. It's really compound growth. It's just that, when you put $100 in now and it turns into $200, when you get a 7% yearly increase on that $200, you're making $14 instead of $7.
Drew, are you asking if that percentage is coming from assuming that the market
no
is
no no, I was just confused about the terminology, like why we talk, because usually when you say interest, I think like, a bank account or a loan or something. But if it's like an investment return or investment growth, then
Yeah.
then it makes more sense to me at least. But people do use it generally to talk about investments for some reason, right?
Yeah, and you are right that it's not actually interest because interest payments are payments made on a debt and stocks are not a debt. They're just company valuations. So you are right. It's not actually compound interest, it's compound growth. So yeah. Okay. So my next point, and this is a big point, is that time in the market, and this is a big phrase that everyone in the frickin' retirement subreddits will tell you, is time in the market is much more valuable than trying to time the market. You shouldn't focus on market timing. You should focus on getting your money in so it can grow. And I'm going to just completely rip this wonderful article that I'll post afterwards about the world's worst market timer. So this is a guy named Bob. He started his career in 1970 at the age of 22. And he decided that in order to retire, he was going to save $2,000 a year in the 70s, and then he was going to bump that up by $2,000 a year every decade after. So 70s, he's saving $2,000 a year, which is $166 a month. 80s, he goes to $4,000. 90s, $6,000. 2000s, $8,000, which is a very approachable amount, I would say. So Bob's very good about saving. He saves this money. However, Bob's very, very terrible at timing. So what he does is he puts his money away in a bank account and he waits, and then right when the market shoots up and peaks, he buys all in. So these are when he invests and how much he invests, and then within the next year, how much the stock market crashed. So he's the worst investor ever, except Bob never sells. Bob only buys. He never, ever, ever sells out of the market. He only buys into the market. So before all of these major historic crashes, he takes the money that he's been saving, sitting in his bank account, and he buys stocks. So overall, he ends up saving $184,000, and that's over the course of his entire career. So Bob has invested $184,000, and he retires in 2013. He started in 1970, he works until 2013 when this article was published. If you guys had to guess, how do you think Bob did? Do you think that he can retire? Do you think he made out like a bandit? Worst possible timer of all time. He was always buying stocks at the worst time.
I'm sure Bob did fine.
Those greater than signs are making me think it might have worked out okay.
So Bob, in 2013, when he retires, has $1.1 million. And if he held off until 2020, he would have $2.7 million. And I do put a warning here. 2010 to 2020 has been an unbelievable stock run. The market has gone up like crazy. It's probably overvalued right now. But the important thing is, and the super important thing that I meant to add a new slide for, and it's so important that I'm going to just add a slide. It is never a bad time to buy. So Bob literally did all the worst possible timing on his buys. He bought right before the market crashed every time for 40 years, and he still made out with $1 million. Bob turned into a fucking millionaire, and that's because he only bought. He never sold. And that is the absolute crux of my investing strategy is I just buy. I buy stocks and I don't sell them because I know that that it's never a bad time to buy. And there are some serious upsides to this. When March hit and the stock market fucking tanked, I wasn't like, and like I think that overnight my portfolio dropped like 20 grand. Like just overnight I was just out 20 grand. I wasn't like, holy shit, the stock market's down. Oh my god, I just lost $20,000. I thought, fuck yeah, stocks are 20% off. There's a 20% buyout sale. Big Bob's Stocks Furniture. Come on down. We're going out of business. Stocks 20% off next month only. So that is really nice. And yeah, what are you gonna say?
So based on that, do you like when that happened? Did you put extra money in, or are you just putting like money into your stocks every paycheck?
So I do have it automated where, yeah, every paycheck and every month it just pulls out. And I did actually, so I talked to Kara about this. We agreed it was the correct choice. And we ended up actually sinking the wedding, our wedding money into the stock market when that happened. Because we're not going on our honeymoon for a long while, and it was already more money than we were going to use anyways. So once we do go on our honeymoon, we're going to end up selling stocks to pay for it, which I find hilarious. But yeah, so I happened to have money sitting around, so I did end up buying more. But in the past, so like Brexit also caused the stock market to drop like a rock. And when that happened, I didn't have any money around, so I was just like, well, next couple paychecks, I'm getting 20% off stocks or whatever. So, you know, if there is a big drop, it's probably a good time to buy. I'm not saying that there aren't better times to buy, but it's never a bad time to buy. And if you ever are not buying because you think that the stock market's going to drop, you should be buying because it's never bad to buy, and you shouldn't be trying to time it like that. And then additionally, as I was saying before, I make no decisions. Like I mean, that one strange example where I happened to have a lot of money sitting around because all of the wedding savings and didn't end up spending all of it on the wedding and honeymoon and all that. But for the most part, besides that, I literally am just on coast. Like I've got a certain amount that I invest every month, and it keeps it so that my checking and savings account stays about where it was before, and that's that. Like in an average month, I don't really have to worry about anything. My bills get paid for me automatically, my investments happen automatically, and I don't have to think about money. Which also has the funny side effect that sometimes people are like, did you hear about the stock market? It like went way up or it went way down, and I literally don't hear about it until days later because it just doesn't matter to me. So that's why I favor this buy strategy, thanks to NSYNC. So any questions on that? Market timing, buying, all that? Cool. All right. So this is Will's question. How do I do this? Like literally, how do I buy a stock? So to purchase stocks and bonds, you need what's called a brokerage account. A brokerage account is just a bank account, except you are allowed to make investments using the money in them. And I want to emphasize that it is just another bank account. You can open a brokerage account, put money in it, and have it just sit there. You don't even have to invest with it. It'll sit in like a money market account and just stay even. And there are very strict rules about how all these different accounts work, and that's why you can't just buy stocks directly in your checking and savings account, is that they have volatility laws and things about whether the account can lose value, which actually, fun fact, checking and savings accounts can never reduce in value. That is illegal. Brokerage accounts certainly can, though. You are more than legal having people buy stocks and have the value go down. So you need a brokerage account. There are different kinds of brokerage accounts. So there are IRAs, individual retirement accounts, and these are special brokerage accounts that have tax incentives. So when you, and sorry there's so much text on this, I tried to cut it down, but what can you do? When you contribute to an IRA, the amount that you contributed is treated as if you never earned it. So if you earned 40 grand and you put 6 grand in an IRA, come tax time, the tax man will treat it as if you made 34 grand and then give you back however much you overpaid because you paid as if you were making 40 grand. So this is best if you are earning more now than after you retire, because your tax rate is higher now than when you retire, if that makes sense. So like if you're making a lot of money now, your tax rate's really high, so you want to reduce your taxable income and get more money back. And then there's Roth IRAs, which are exactly the same as an IRA, but the money is, so you pay taxes on the money, and then you put it in, and then once you take it out, you don't have to pay taxes on it because you've already paid taxes. And that's the opposite, where it's better if you are earning less now than you plan to have in retirement. But there's a few huge caveats and reasons why I'm actually going to recommend that you open a Roth IRA if you are just starting out. And the biggest one is that all the money that you put in can be withdrawn at any time, penalty free. So if you put in $6,000 today and then you fall down a flight of stairs and you need your tibia relocated or whatever, you can pull that $6,000 out, no harm, no foul. Additionally, you can pull out up to $10,000 to pay for your first home down payment. There's special programs for that. So it's really good as a way of letting you invest and get your money in the market while still having it free. And that's why I think it's a good place to start, is that if you buy too much, if you realize that the money you put in, you actually needed it, you can take it right back out, no problem. If you take money out of an IRA, you're going to have to pay an extra 10% on it. So if you take out $100, you're only going to get $90 out because you're cheating the tax man, and they don't like that. So that being said, it's certainly not a bad idea to open a traditional IRA up front if you know that the money is just going to sit there and you're not going to need it. But Roth IRAs give you a little more flexibility. 401ks are retirement accounts that are sponsored by your work. They have the same tax rules as a traditional IRA, where every dollar you put in is treated as if you never earned it, and then come tax time, you get paid back for however much you put into it and got taxed on when you shouldn't have been. And then finally, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Is there a reason to have a traditional IRA if you have a 401k available?
Yes. So the two reasons are, and actually I will add, there are limits. If you have a 401k available and you're over certain incomes, they just literally don't let you have a traditional IRA. They're like, just use your 401k, bro. But yes, the big reasons are, first off, so when you have a 401k through work, they decide who owns the account. So like I have a 401k through Principal, which is just some randy fucking company. And so Principal decides which index funds I'm allowed to buy with my 401k money. And I'll tell you right now, I've got worse expense ratios and worse choices through my Principal 401k than I do through my Vanguard IRA. So investing first into the IRA and then into the 401k is generally better, because you can open the IRA with any company you want and have better index fund choice. And sometimes you can get really fucked on 401k index funds. There are some very, very shady 401k runners that only have expense ratios above like 2% and shit like that. Besides that, though, there's not too much reason, but I would say, you should probably aim to put into the traditional IRA first and then the 401k, with one caveat that we'll get to. And then lastly, there are health savings accounts. These are only available if you have a high deductible health plan through your work, an HDHP. These are very, very good retirement accounts because when you put money in, it reduces your taxes and the money gets to grow tax-free. And then when you take it out, which you can only do to pay for health costs, which, spoilers, you're going to have health costs, it's also tax-free coming out. you don't have your income increase when it comes out. And the important thing on health savings accounts is that you can invest them. I use Fidelity HSA, and not all HSAs have investment options, but most of them do. So they act as sort of hybrid accounts where part of it is for paying for medical expenses, but then part of it is just invested into index funds. Like through Fidelity, I just buy stocks. And then lastly, you can also just open a taxable brokerage account, but you should not do that until you run out of all tax-free space, which is $6,000 for your IRA plus $18,000 for your 401k. There is an $18,000 limit on how much you can contribute to your 401k per year. So if you're saving 24 grand and you really need somewhere else to put your money, go ahead and open a taxable account. So those are the actual types of accounts. And you can open these accounts at various different places. Rather, IRAs, you choose where to open them, and taxable accounts. 401k and HSA, your work decides. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Your 401k, your work decides where it's opened, and then your HSA, your work decides your initial HSA, but if you ever change jobs or close, you can open your HSA wherever you want. Yeah, so chances are you guys are going to be opening an IRA. And if you are sold on my investment strategy and you want to buy index funds, the only two companies that are relevant at all are Vanguard and Fidelity. I would say that they are very, very comparable. There is very little to differentiate them. Fidelity has slightly better fund choices, and they even have some funds that have a 0% expense ratio. Fun fact. Sorry about that. Every other company charges more for index funds. I personally use Vanguard, and I would recommend them. They are pretty cool in that they're actually owned by the customers. So when I invest into Vanguard index funds, I actually own part of Vanguard through that. And so they're set up kind of like a weird nonprofit where there's like a board that makes decisions, but ultimately they are just trying to reduce their expense ratios as much as they possibly can. And I do want to take a moment to give a shout out to John Bogle, one of the greatest philanthropists of all time. He invented the index fund, and then he founded Vanguard to implement it. And he could have raised those expense ratios and just charged people literal billions of dollars and put it right in his pocket. He literally chose not to be a billionaire. Don't get me wrong. He was super rich. You know, he made well over $100 million. But nonetheless, rather than choosing to take billions from Americans, he reduced expense ratios as much as he possibly could to make it so that Americans could invest in the stock market as cheaply as possible. Really cool guy. I'm very thankful to him for having done this. So yeah, that's that on the actual accounts. One thing I want to briefly touch on, so IRAs are limited to $6,000 in contributions per year. However, you actually have until April of the next year to contribute to the previous year. So if you go and open an IRA now, you can invest up to $6,000 in 2020 contributions until April of 2021. It's weird, but it has to do with the fact that like taxes aren't due until April or something. So that's nice. It's not the calendar year, it's the tax year. So you can start contributing for 2021 starting in January until April of 2022. Just a nice good thing to know about. So yeah, any questions on IRAs or anything before I move on?
So regarding taxing, and say for someone who hasn't had any money in investment now, and I want to put a lot of money to it, it's gonna be well over the 6K limit. And so how much do you get taxed for a taxable account? Is it something I should be worried about, or is this again like it's just better to be taxed and be in the market for longer with that money?
So that depends partly on what you buy. There are some index funds that are more expensive for taxes because of like dividends and stuff. I think maybe we should talk after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because if you're looking at this, so I mean it'll be 6K for this year, 6K for next year. But if you're looking at 12K and thinking I've still got room, then we should probably talk.
Okay.
Yeah. And sort of, I'm in a similar boat. So, can you, like, is the 6,000 limit for the IRA and the Roth IRA, or is it?
Yeah, it's across both of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can stay after and talk about your two particular financial states. But yeah, cool. So quickly touching on 401k matching. If you work for a company that has a 401k, chances are that they match contributions. So at my work, up to 5% of my salary is matched at 50% of my contributions. And if your work has a 401k and they have a 401k match, you should always contribute to maximize it. Regardless of anything else, it's literally free money. Do it. Always. It's always a good choice before anything else. It's free money, and you should do it. It's like 100% return. It's ridiculous, or in my case, a 50% return. So 401k matching, always maximize the match before anything else. So yeah, this is my handy dandy step-by-step tutorial. So open either a Roth or traditional IRA. Again, depends on where you're from, but I'm going to say it's good to start with a Roth IRA because of the flexibility. You're going to have to contribute at least $1,000 because that's the investment minimum for index funds. And then you buy this target date fund with that money. And then the important bit is set up automatic contributions. Start at just $50 a month, something low that you know is not going to cause you undue harm, and you can grow from there. You can always up it. If it starts feeling like too much, you can drop it. As we learned from Bob, 166 bucks a month can mean retiring. And then also briefly, stocks pay out what's called dividends, where at random they'll decide to just pay money to the people who own their stocks. And if you don't tell your brokerage account, it will just have those dividends sit there and do nothing. So make sure that when you're setting things up, if it ever asks you, you tell it to reinvest your dividends, where you get paid the money from these stocks and then it will automatically buy more. Not reinvesting dividends can be a really huge drag. And then also, don't worry about any of this if you don't have an emergency fund. We went over it in the first episode, but the emergency fund is more important than this. Focus on that first, and then worry about getting your retirement account set up. And then, yeah, I don't even know if I wanted to talk about this, but yeah. a lot of people aren't sold on saving for retirement because they think like, oh, I want to spend my money now so it can make me happy. But like, saving money is good because eventually you'll have fuck you money where if your boss tries to jerk you around or, you know, get you to do things, you can just tell them to fuck off because you know you've got a big stinking pile of money waiting for you at home. So having that money sitting there is great. It helps with all sorts of things like getting houses. It's good to save. And I think that's it. There was one more thing that I was thinking about talking about, which is the portfolio effect and bond tents, but that's kind of advanced. So I think what I'm going to do instead is just post a link to an article about that, and then anyone that's interested can just read that. But yeah, that's it. Any questions anyone had for me? Anything that was unclear I could go over again?
Yeah, just to clarify how the account thing works.
Mhm.
So it's like you put your money in the account,
Mhm.
and then, there's like some web interface where you go on and you're like, okay, what do you do with this money that is now in your account? And then they like have you choose what to invest your money in that's in that account.
Exactly. Yep. You go to Vanguard.com, you click Open an IRA, and then it asks you some questions about who you are, and then it says, how much are you putting in this IRA? And you say, $1,000, and you give it your bank account information, and then it's going to say, what do you want me to do with that money? And you say, I want you to buy a target date fund, and then it'll say, should I reinvest the dividends? And you say, yes, sir, please. And then they say, all right, cool. And then they go off, they take your $1,000, they buy your target date fund, and they'll reinvest the dividends. And then separately, you can set up automatic investing. I will say, if you're on the fence about Vanguard versus Fidelity, Fidelity does have a bit better of a website. I'm okay with Vanguard's website, but it is a little old school, so. That answer the question? Anything else?
Yeah.
Cool. And it really is quite easy. They make it, 5-step process.
They make it easy for you to give them your money.
They do make it easy for you to give them their money, yes.
It's probably good.
So yeah, any other questions, guys? Cool. Alright, well, I hope that was helpful. This was a fun one to do. This is my favorite subject when it comes to personal finance. It's fun to talk investing and whatnot. So yeah, hope it was helpful. I'll put this up on YouTube too, in case anyone wants to, I don't know, reference it or whatever. But yeah. Thanks for coming, guys. And Will and Caleb, we can stick around and talk your particulars and strategy thereof.
Well, thanks so much for doing this, Jules. This is
Yeah, thank you.
helpful.
Yeah, no problem.